because Turkey has a very important strategic role in the Middle East, and in order to establish peace in the region, these two countries, America and Turkey, should unite and act together, according to us.
I mean, not just on diplomatic level. You know, we are two countries. Apparently, America has a existence in the region for the last 5 decades. So America is literally in the region right now. We are together here in the region. And there are only 3 countries, including America, if we include America in the region, who are not Marxists. It's Israel, Turkey, and America. So we have to be closer to each other. I mean, there has to be a much more sincere relationship, a much more close relationship between the people of America and Turkey.
In order to educate people in the region, this is so essential.
You know, the big thing here that is really nice that we keep going back to is the Turkish Islamic Union. Because when you look at the way this is structured, with the different countries in the area and the benefits that it could have for not only Turkey and America and Israel and even Syria and the surrounding countries. There's a lot of work that I think the U.S. can be involved in with the formation of the Turkish Islamic Union. And I don't know how much you know about this yet, Scotty, but there is a push on right now to get this formed. And what it will do is actually open up this kind of travel you're talking about. Hopefully in the Middle East, and hopefully a little more around the world, and that will encourage more economic trade and people getting to know each other more in the 3 different countries in communication. Because you're right when you say that with the security we have, the borders have tightened up. And we have the United Nations, NATO, the European Union. We have a lot of different factions that are involved in these areas, are involved in all of the skirmishes and the wars, and we've actually been in the Middle East since 1953, and that was a coup on Iran. So there are a lot of different factions that you have to look at when you look at relations between the West and the East, and one of those, I think, is America learning to respect the views and the political and personal situations in the Middle East, because they are so different. And a lot of people here, I think, especially in government, need to really know a lot more about the people there and what is wanted by the people of those governments rather than what the governments of those people are looking for. Because overall, the big picture we have to look at is the safety and the economics and what is good for the people of the world, not exactly what is good for a lot of the people that are in the governments of the world right now. As far as education, that is the #1 issue all around the world right now is education, because actually America is really, really low in educational. If you look at the educational chart on how we are educated here in America, we are I think we're like 43rd, which is really, really a disgrace when you look at it, because the Department of Education that we have has about, I think, about 5,000 members. And the last I looked, it was the budget for our education department was about $15 billion. When you compare that to $1.3 trillion that they spend on war, there is a big lack there, even in the numbers as far as education in our own country. And I agree with you when you first said that education is not recognized in the Constitution, and it's not. And there was actually a lot going on with that when it came into play. And it's actually been around for over 150 years. The Department of Education was actually formed here originally in 1867 in the U.S., and it wasn't represented by any president. It just came in as a minor bureau through the Department of the Interior, and it was actually transferred to the Federal Security Agency. So our Department of Education, I totally agree, needs to have something done with that. And I've heard some of your views on that, Scotty, and I know that you don't believe the government should be have their fingers in that as deep as they do. So do you, what would be your plans with something like that, you know, when you get in there.
Okay,
And
well,
I say when because I told you get in there.
thank you very much for your optimism. Well, speaking just as a person who had been a student, and I mean, it's kind of interesting looking back and now being a half century old, being able to actually kind of compare the changes that have happened in this country over time. And I remember listening to my grandparents when they used to tell me things. I used to say, "Wow, it's amazing you've seen all these changes." And I'm not sure the changes I've seen are quite as good as the ones that I've seen. Some of them yes, some of them no. But there was no Department of Education when I was a student. And the generation that preceded me, the generation of Americans that had put people on the moon, they did not have a Department of Education. The excellence of education in the United States has been on the decline since then. Now, whether or not that's because of or in spite of or whatever the Department of Education, it certainly hasn't helped us. And it has, and as I have mentioned earlier, it's not within the enumerated powers directly anyway. So I really would want to see that money stay in the communities, in the states, or in the pockets of the parents, but not going up to the federal government and trickling back to the states. And the other thing that comes with that money, it's not just a matter of the money being moved around like a shell game, but we also, of course, there's a cost that decreases those dollars that are returned to the community to maintain this bureaucracy. And all that money comes back with strings attached. And those strings, I don't think, are beneficial. These idea of standardizing curriculum across an entire country the size of the United States, and you put it in perspective, be like standardizing the curriculum around the entire European Union. I don't think that is beneficial. I think just the opposite, in fact. I think as many different manners of education that we can make available to people, to let people choose what modality of learning works best for them, that's the best approach. And what we have right now in our classrooms is really something I think called the Prussian model. It's a very old way of structuring a classroom that is terribly outdated. And if for instance, if it is argued that actually it's still good, well, fine, but let it compete with other models of a classroom arrangement or distance learning or homeschooling or other forms of face-to-face classroom group learning. But there's so many different types of ways people can learn, and that should be made available, and whatever works best, that will win. I mean, a free market of ideas and a free market of learning about ideas.
Do you think there has to be... No, please go ahead.
What I was going to say was that we can't really blame the Department of Education for that, because in actuality, the Department of Education, the U.S. Department of Education, is not that involved in the curricula of education in America. Actually, if you look up their mission statement, it's to promote student achievement and preparation for global competitiveness by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access. And that in itself, if you look at education around the world, I think that is a big misnomer on the part of their mission, because I too I'm actually getting ready to go back and finish my last year of college right now. And when you look at the education system, say in Turkey, and I know the girls there can probably tell us a little bit about some of the curriculum you have to meet when you go through school there, and compared to here, the equal access and for global preparation and competitiveness that they talk about is not there in our education system. And this is something that should be on a local level. I agree, and actually this is something that should start at home, but we have to start educating parents before their parents to be able to teach their children how important this is. And I think that's one big drawback we have in the U.S. right now is that type of point-specific education on things other than reading, writing, and arithmetic, because we don't have a lot of philosophy that is a required subject in school. You have math and reading and science, and those are all basic that are required in schools right now. Myself, I think that ought to be a lot more stringent and have philosophy and world history be actually required before you can get out of high school. And a lot of those aren't right now. So I think we're seriously lacking in the education department, and that's got to start at the state level because the Department of Education doesn't have the funding or the personnel to do that. And a lot of people are under the impression that it does. So that is something I would like to see brought about with a lot of other changes in our government. There's a lot that need to be done, and I think you're definitely on the right track, Scotty.
In fact, I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Okay, now I was just going to say, yeah, philosophy I think is really, I agree 100%. We need to have more philosophy at all levels of school. And I mean, I had the good fortune of going to a private school where we kind of had a philosophy permeating the entire curriculum, and it was called the Detroit Waldorf School, based upon the philosophy of anthroposophy, which was developed by a German person named Rudolf Steiner. So in that context, I actually learned quite a lot that I would not have learned had I been in the public system. I did get in the public system as a high school student. I taught school at a variety of different levels in Michigan. One thing I found was when I did try to apply some of the things I had learned from my experience to the high school math instruction, wherein I wanted to teach geometry before algebra as in a math class. And my reasoning being, one thing was an art-oriented school, and geometry is a more direct application to the arts than does algebra. But another factor was historically, and the Waldorf model that I had learned under starts with the idea of teaching the child ideas in the same order in which people learned them historically. And geometry developed long before algebra. So that was the approach I was taking. But the state had some tests, a standardized test that they were requiring all these schools to use in order to get their funding. And that standardized test insisted that people learn algebra by such and such grade, and then later on they include geometry, and so I wasn't able to apply that.
Okay.